There are video games that change the industry, games that make headlines, ones that make memes. And then there are games that quietly worm the way into our chest, squeeze our empathy, and refuse to let go. Detroit Become Human is, without a doubt, one of those games. Upon release in 2018, it was both celebrated and controversial, a cinematic branching narrative that treated players' agency not as gimmick, but as, they were the very lifeblood of its storytelling. You weren't just playing a game, you were witnessing, shaping, and shouldering the moral weight of a world on the brink on a new kind of humanity. And though the credits rolled on Kara, Marcus, and Connor years ago, the conversation never really ended. In 2026, nearly 8 years after the original launch, Detroit Become Human continues to find new audiences, climbing sales charts, and even hitting startling new milestones long after its prime. In fact, the game recently surpassed 15 million copies sold worldwide, making it the studio's most successful title to date. Well, that's the kind of enduring legacy that doesn't go unnoticed. But for all the love and speculation, the truth remains. There is no officially announced Detroit Become Human 2 in development right now. No press release, of course, no teaser trailer, production state, not a whisper from Quantic Dream or any publisher confirming that a sequel has actually entered full development. In fact, what we do have is a landscape that's just full of signs, signals, community hope, and industry context that makes the notion of a sequel feel less like a fantasy, more like a matter of when, not if. The original Detroit Become Human was designed as a complete narrative arc, a trilogy-like journey across the lives of 3 protagonists as androids grappled with consciousness, identity, and freedom. Given its branching paths and multiple endings, crafting a direct sequel with the same characters presents a pretty unique challenge. The game's very structure doesn't lend itself to a single canonical outcome, and many fans view that as part of its brilliance and a reason a traditional sequel might be quite tricky. Reddit threads and community discussions reflect this tension. Some players feel the story is complete and shouldn't be touched, while others long to return to that universe, even if with new faces of fresh narrative angles. But beyond debate, there is one undeniable fact. The world Quantic Dream built around androids and autonomy is still relevant. Conversations about AI, right control, and technology are more urgent now than they ever were back in 2018, arguably even more relevant in 2026. Which alone makes the idea of a sequel not just plausible but quite potent. One reason Detroit 2 hasn't been officially announced yet is likely tied to the studio's philosophy and its current state of projects. Studio head David Cage has long spoken about sequels only happening if they are narratively justified, not simply for commercial reasons. In interviews around the original game's release, Cage suggested that Detroit Become Human would only receive a follow-up if there was a compelling new story to tell, something that adds meaning rather than simply rehashing the old beats. That approach has defined Quantic Dream for years. Unlike many Western studios chasing long franchise runs, they've treated sequels as exceptions rather than the rule. Heavy Rain didn't get a direct sequel, Beyond Two Souls stands alone, and while Detroit's popularity dwarfs both, the commitment to narrative integrity hasn't changed. Today, Quantic Dream is still very much focused on other projects, notably Star Wars Eclipse, which is a branching narrative game set in a Star Wars universe, and one that's been in development for years, described as one of the studio's most ambitious projects, and its progress arguably takes priority over any immediate sequel to Detroit. And at the same time, Quantic Dream is expanding its portfolio into things like free-to-play multiplayer experiences, which shows a studio not entirely locked into one genre or franchise. Which all of this sort of paints a picture of a studio that prioritizes creative directions and long, thoughtful development cycles, which means if Detroit 2 does happen, it almost certainly won't be rushed. On another hand, the ongoing commercial success of Detroit Become Human, with millions of copies sold years after launch, boosted in part big discounts and renewed interests, could not be ignored. Numbers like that show a game with longevity, which in industry terms is gold. Publishers rarely ignore intellectual properties to continue selling well and attracting new players years after release. This steady performance strengthens the case that a sequel could be financially viable even if it is not yet officially announced. But sales alone don't, win approvals. Story vision, technological readiness, and timing all matter. And right now, Quantic Dream's attention seems divided between Eclipse, multiplayer ventures, and building their strengths as a self-publishing multi-project studio. Here's where things get sort of intriguing. Fans and storytelling have been imagining various ways a sequel could work. Number 1, a new story in the same world. Instead of continuing directly from Marcus, Kara, or Connor, the sequel could introduce new protagonists, facing a new, different aspect of Android society, perhaps in a new region. This would allow the game to respect the original's multiple endings, while still telling a story that feels connected. Number 2, Detroit's mythology is vast. What happened in other cities? What did other countries deal with Android rights? A prequel also could explore the early rise of deviancy and the corporate politics that set the stage for Detroit's revolution. Several fans have suggested setting stories alongside Detroit's events, even in places like Tokyo, where an Android uprising might take a different shape. In fact, in many ways, Detroit Become Human was less about specific characters and more about ideas, identity, choice, humanity, freedom. A sequel could also revisit those themes in new settings, with fresh narratives and moral challenges that feel baked into the era's technological anxieties. This approach also mirrors how anthology TV series handle thematic continuity with requiring the same cast. Of course, the realistic side of the story is clear. There is currently no official confirmation of Detroit Become Human 2 in development. Quantic Dream's main focus right now is other games, especially Star Wars Eclipse. The narrative complexity of the original makes any direct sequel very challenging, and Quantic Dream would only pursue a sequel if they feel like they've got a story worth to tell. But there's also reason, cautious optimism. Detroit's legacy is too strong to simply vanish. Its narrative style has influenced countless adventure games and narrative experiences. Its commercial performance shows it still attracts players, and the fact that fans are actively imagining sequel possibilities even years later sparks volumes about its cultural impact. So, whether a sequel arrives as Detroit Become Human 2, a spin-off, a prequel, or a thematic successor, one thing feels increasingly likely. This world is not finished. The conversation around Android's choice and consequences, powered by one of the most divisive, memorable stages of the 2010s, still resonates in 2026 and beyond. And that means the future of Detroit, whatever shape it takes, is far from decided. Because some stories don't end, they just wait for the right moment to continue.